Hail Dicelings and ready your death poems, because today we're talking about Legend of the Five Rings, the character tools. So the last video that you guys saw was us putting together our characters for the beta adventure that's included inside the Fantasy Flight rules. We spent about 4 hours. We answered the 20 questions for 5 players. And Murdoch went really in depth about the different things that were involved in there, so there's not going to be a lot of crunch in this video. This is more to fill in the blanks of the fluff for my particular character so that you can see the 20 questions in use and the tools, because I made sure that I actually use the tools provided by Fantasy Flight, because when I go to provide my feedback on the forums, I want to make sure that I include specific things about the tools that I was using, if I liked them, if I didn't like them, things like that, because a lot of times things that I've noticed is when you get a great game, it doesn't become really awesome until somebody takes the time to make a better character sheet than what the publisher came out with. So I'm hoping that with some of these things we can talk about things that will make the sheets better for players to use. So let's kind of jump right into this. I'm going to do a little share screen here, as we've done in the past, and these are the 20 questions for the character that I wrote up, Daidoji Satoshi. So a lot of this is stuff that we kind of already covered inside the previous one: who my clan is, what values they have, which things they basically put emphasis on, who my family is, and things like that. So inside this video, you'll see a link to a forum, and on there, the Happy Jacks forum, you'll find a link to the fillable sheets that I'm using. These were pretty cool. I'm glad that somebody went ahead and put in fillable boxes, because we were going to do the same thing, but I'm not going to double up my work. So all in all, the sheet was really easy to use. Just to show you guys, I used the paper sheets originally, and then I just transferred it over to the computer, and I filled in a couple gaps that were missing. Because I wanted to post this as well in case anybody wants to see this or use it as a reference for their own characters. So all in all, the sheet was really easy to fill out. Let's talk about some of the storyline stuff. So what character or what clan does your character belong to? We already answered that, being Crane. Daidoji family. I am a Bushi from the Kikita Duelist School. And we already kind of talked about most of this stuff. I mentioned that my starting techniques were Aiijutsu and, or at least I believe I did, a choice of Shallow Waters or the Weight of Duty. Originally I picked Shallow Waters, but the more I considered the character that I actually wrote up, I liked Weight of Duty better, so I switched over to that one. There are a couple of starting equipment options on here. I have a choice between a Naginata or a spear, and an attendant or a pony. So far I've decided that I'm going to stick with the spear. I haven't decided between an attendant or pony. Since my character is basically a Yojimbo, I think I'm going to stick with a pony just as what my character has with them. Aside from all of that, we kind of get into some of the areas where we didn't really answer questions. So these were the two that we were taking our time with. Like, what is your character's duty to their lord, and what does your character long for? And this is your Giri and your Ninjo. Your Giri being what is your duty, and what do you long for is your Ninjo. So my character's duty, we mentioned it during the video, was to protect the Bayushi Courtier's life. I haven't received his name yet, so I'm just going to put Bayushi Courtier for now. His words will be dulled by vigilance and duty. So the idea is that my character has taken on this task, and his lord basically told him that if he stays vigilant, I don't know why I put by in there twice, if he stays vigilant, he's actually going to disrupt what the Scorpion are planning. I'll save that later. Disrupt what the Scorpion are planning. So basically he wants to show that the Crane are more than what the Whispers around court are. So a very proactive and kind of counter tactic done by his lord, who I'm thinking is probably going to be the Daidoji Daimo, and we'll get more into that as we go along. So what does the character long for? To be reassigned as to a doji courtier as a Yojimbo. My character is very happy with the role of Yojimbo and considers it an honor, but what he would really enjoy is basically doing what his family has always been done in the past, which is a Daidoji serving the doji family. So that's mainly what I went with. As far as my opinion on the clan, again, we talked about that earlier. It is in alignment with the clan, so I got a little bit of glory bump. And Bushido, I mentioned that as most Daidoji, I value duty greater than courtesy. There's actually a really cool thing that comes from the previous storyline that I'm going to continue with this character, which is there are two parts of the Daidoji family. There's the Harriers, which are effectively the spies that the Crane never really acknowledges. And then there's also another chapter which are like the Daidoji bodyguards, and then there's also the Bushi that are mainly focused in spears. My character is going with the spirit of the bodyguard idea, but with the Kikita duelist school. One of the things that the Daidoji do during their Ginpaku ceremonies is they actually tattoo the symbol of the Daidoji family on their wrist, specifically, sorry, I don't know why I pointed out my left, specifically their right wrist, their sword arm. And that is to reflect that they are always dutiful to their family and ultimately to the doji family. So my character will have that mark. I've already kind of made that my choice on that one. So this was really where we kind of went one at a time from this point forward. This is where we're going to spend the most part on this video. And you guys can check out these things plus my final character sheet just to see how it looks once it's finally done. So as a Daidoji child, what is your greatest accomplishment so far? I went with quick reflexes, and I said basically as a child, Daidoji Satoshi was called Inari, which is like the fox spirits, due to his speed. They say that he ran before he walked. Inari being a childhood name, this could be problematic if it comes up in court. It's a little embarrassing, and I think that it'll provide Murdoch a chance to, if he introduces one of the characters that I've actually named inside my backstory here at any point during our adventure, it will give them a name that would be special to them, that would be endearing in a close-knit environment, but very embarrassing in a public environment. Like his teacher, for example, calling him Inari in court would be very embarrassing. So what holds your character back most in life? That little tiny writing there basically says that I lost my eye in a duel with one of the senior students at the Kikita Academy, who is Kikita Kyoko. And that during his Ginpaku ceremony, he was gifted with Kyoko's Suba, or the cross guard, which he now wears as an eye patch. We kind of talked about that in the video. I added that Kyoko is now known to be one of the next best duelists. So when he wears that eye patch, I expect people to recognize the Suba as she has a matching one that has replaced the one that she gave him. And that it's kind of known that she is known to give these items away occasionally to the particular opponents that maybe impressed her. And that's kind of the idea that I had for Kyoko. That's one of my named people that could be embarrassing for me in the future. And then for making me feel at peace, I went with Animal Bond. It was kind of a weird choice, but I decided that I wanted to have a hawk named Ayano, which is a bird that he helped mend its wings. And since Ayano looks to Satoshi as a mother-like figure is basically what it says there. I was thinking about a dog because he's a Yojimbo, having another guard animal, but I decided that a hawk might be a little bit better. One thing I did notice is we made the joke that hawks in 4th edition were basically flying katanas because their stats were really ridiculous. The hawks in this edition are not nearly as ridiculously deadly, so that was something to kind of notate there. And then, what concern, fear, or foible troubles your character most? I went with Ferocity on this one. This was kind of a hard choice. I had a lot of different options to choose from, but Ferocity basically means that when I fight a minion, I will kill them. Like, there's no sparing minions' lives. And then when I do something that would go against my normal ferocity type nature, Basically, as an adversary die, it causes rerolls, and we'll talk about that more when I get to the character sheet, because the character sheet, is pretty handy about this stuff. So Satoshi's always been warned against pushing it too far in his duels and his own, what did I put here? And his own luck. He often forgets this. And my dogs are going to go crazy. Oh, actually, that wasn't too bad. Next, what character, or who has your character learned the most from during their life? There we go. I don't know why that was so hard. I went with my teacher, which is kind of a common thing, I would think, for most characters. That's going to be Kakita Hino. So Murdoch had us write down what their advantage, disadvantage, and skill increase would be. That way we had to kind of think about it and choose which one we wanted to do. So originally I just thought about the negative because that's what I was kind of thinking I was going to go with. Basically a +1 in martial arts melee, making me better at swords, and Whispers of Doom, which is kind of a disadvantage that basically says that everybody that you travel around with fears that they might die, which I thought was pretty hilarious for a Yojimbo to have Whispers of Doom, which would explain why he wasn't assigned to a doji, and instead assigned to a clan that is quite possibly and definitely at odds with the clan at the moment. But I instead decided to go with the advantage, which is Keen Smell. Keen Smell allows you to identify special qualities. You can remember things by their smell. You can detect if things are poisonous or if they're safe to eat by smell. Things like that. I just thought it was kind of a cool thing for a Yojimbo to have, because I thought, what if like the character's about to drink something like a tea that has been poisoned, and my character gets a chance to make an insights check or something like that, whatever the skill may be, basically to notice that there's something wrong with the tea. So I thought that was a really cool thing to do. And I like the idea that it was taught to him by his teacher. I imagine that her passion, even though it's not listed here, was probably something like tea, something that was very aromatic and required a lot of smelling and valuing. And so he grew up inside the dojo, basically learning swordsmanship, how to evaluate tea for quality, and smell, and basically steeping and things like that. So I thought that was a really cool idea to go with. What details do others find most striking about your character? He wears a tsuba for an eye patch. While that may be common in anime, that is not common in Rukagon, so that is something that definitely immediately makes him stand out. He's missing an eye, of course. And those were the two things that I mainly thought that's what people will remember him by. So how does your character respond to stressful situations? This one I liked because basically you get to personalize one of your outbursts. Outbursts happen when you gain a lot of stress, and it's how your character copes with the amount of stress that you've had. So I put down that Satoshi will typically look for a weapon to ready. Stress is a sign that danger is present, and that kind of matches with the idea of being a Yojimbo. So my personal outburst, I kind of customized become enrage. You could also you could also create a new outburst. I chose to customize instead because I thought it was better. He will carry his weapon by the sheath or at the ready. He grows more serious and pointed with his speech. So that gives me a little bit of a clue on to how I will RP the personal outburst, but also the fact that I will carry a weapon by the sheath or at the ready, one of those two specifically. If I become enraged in let's say a court scene, and I grab my katana out of my belt and I hold it by my sheath as I become more and more serious with the person, there's a chance that I have escalated the duel that will probably come from me being enraged to the point where it might become a duel to the death. It kind of represents that little bit of kind of hot-headed nature that we talked about with Ferocity. So I wanted to kind of repeat that somewhere else and kind of keep that value. So what are my pre-existing relationships? We talked about the Scorpion clan. He's actually started to respect their value of duty. The Doji family, he has been endearing himself to them for many years and hopes that they basically take him on one day as a Yojimbo. The other people that I put down on my relationship list are Kakita Hino and Kakita Kyoko. as people that would be like NPCs and things like that that could come up in the story and that have meaning to my character. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the character sheet, because there's a good section for that. Next is Ancestry and Family. So the parents describing them, this one I kind of thought about for a little while, and basically the truth is the boy was always more insightful than the others. It's not that he was faster, he just knew how to take advantage of little situations or find the shortest way. That's basically what I put down. So while he has quick reflexes, it's more of a reflective nature of his observational ability and his applied knowledge ability. Again, kind of harking back to what makes a good bodyguard kind of ideas. So who was the character named for? I chose maternal grandfather, and I talked about it in the video. I did make a change to it. Originally, I was going to go with an outsider, and then I realized what that actually means on the chart. It would mean that my character is an outsider to the clan and has been adopted in. Not that my grandfather was an outsider and adopted in. So I picked something else on there, which was the Ruthless Victor. So Ruthless Victor, I will talk about mechanics here. -5 honor, +1 martial arts melee, and that helps kind of round out my swordsmanship, which I was looking for. He was a Taisa in the Crane army and fought off lion forces for an entire winter with no resupply. Emerged the victor. His bloody armor remains in the Daidoji Daimo house. So I'm thinking that he probably has not won friends within the Lion clan. So that will probably come up at some point, or at least I should say his grandfather did not win friends within the Lion clan, and he may be affected by that. The personal name is Daidoji Satoshi, and I did speak about his childhood name being Inari, which I won't be too surprised if Murdoch has one of the characters from the past show up during our adventure and bring up something like that, or something else that happened during the childhood, because Murdoch is good about seeing how L5R works. The last question, Murdoch asked us not to fill it out. I went ahead and filled it out just because I want to be thorough in my testing phase here, basically, which is how should your character die? I put old age, passing one final lesson to his students before returning to the karmatic wheel. My character, the thing that I really like about this is my character basically knows that he will not complete his purpose, that he knows that this current life is already imperfect. And that he will return to the karmatic wheel. He's taken it as a fact, which will kind of flavor how he is played out. So with that in mind, that's basically how the 20 questions work. Applying the 20 questions to the character sheet. So the best way to do it is to start from the beginning and work your way back through the 20 questions, essentially. Taking all these results and plugging them in. So let me show you the character sheet real quick here. Again, Happy Jack's link inside the comments there for fillable sheets. So yeah, the questions went okay, filling in from the 20 questions to the sheet. There were some areas where I had to jump around a little bit, but it wasn't too confusing or anything. So let me see if the extra buy is in here, because I copied and pasted a lot of this stuff. All right, it was. So my character does have 24 experience. I had a 1 in fire and a 1 in water to start. And then my numbers up here were a little bit different. Like my, what was it from the Ancestor? Ancestor knocked down my honor. So I had a 50 honor to start. So that gives you kind of an idea of some of the changes. I increased my martial arts, and I'll show you how all that is recorded inside here. But there are some things that I really do like about the character sheet. So it's broken up into types of play. And this is something that Fantasy Flight has done well in the past with Warhammer Fantasy. 2nd edition, creating like a narrative and a combat character type sheet. Warhammer 40k uses a similar setup, but this is a little bit more towards the narrative dice and how the structure works inside there, but using some of the good ideas that they gained from those games. So your Ninja and Giri are right on the first page. I like that because those are specific to your character. There is a blank box on here for titles. They haven't gotten into that inside the beta thus far, But I have a feeling that kind of like your school titles will be things that you can put on and off your character that will have meaning and can be earned as rewards inside the game. I really like the idea of it, but I want to see the execution before I pass any judgments on it. So at the beginning of each skill section, they actually talk about how to use the approaches or the rings when using these types of skills. So what I really like is the character sheet redefines this stuff and reinforces it. So if I want to craft or repair a work of art, I'm going to pick one of these skills, and then I'm going to choose an appropriate approach. So if I am repairing a sword, I'm going to repair a work of art, smithing for a sword, and I'm going to restore it. So I'm probably going to use earth for this. So it's going to be an earth plus smithing roll. I happen to have a 3 in earth, so I'm going to roll 3 black dice for my ring, and I'm going to be able to keep 3 black dice. Having more skill ranks means, or having skill ranks means you get to roll white dice, and that usually means more chances of you succeeding. The black dice are pretty hard-edged as far as what their results are, whereas the white dice, you have a little bit more range of successes possible on them. So this is where your distinctions, adversities, passions, and anxieties actually come up on the sheet, and I like that it reinforces this, which is like your distinctions. Reroll up to 2 dice of your choice when distinction helps you on a check. So I put the page numbers on here to be able to reinforce this. I would suggest this for the beta tests, especially if you continue playing through the different versions of the beta. That way you remember where it is, and then ultimately inside the actual game itself. Just a really handy way for you to make referencing rules a lot easier. So I went ahead and plugged in all of them on there to give you kind of a quick idea. Like if I was rolling for keen smell and I wanted to identify a specific quality or something, if it was like poisonous by smell, that's when I would be able to re-roll 2 of my dice because it helps in that check. So it gets pretty specific. So like at adversities, re-roll 2 dice showing the success or triumph results when a flaw hinders your check. Then if you failed, regain 1 void point. So like let's say my lost eye got in the way and I re-roll my success and or triumph results there, and it causes me to fail. I start the game with 1 void, and then I can gain more void through like adversities and things like that. So now I'm up to 2 voids so long as I haven't spent any. I can go to my max, or I can go to my void number. Excuse me. I can go to my void number, but I can't exceed that, so I always want to be conscious of that. So Animal Bond, basically, after performing a check related to my passion, I remove 3 strife, and anxieties are the opposite. When performing a check related to my anxiety, I suffer 3 strife, and if I do an outburst because of it, I gain a void point. So Ferocity actually works really well for that, since I am a duelist. Basically, basically this is kind of stacking the deck in my favor. If I suffer an outburst and I choose to become enraged, I challenge someone to a duel, I'm going to get a void point going into the duel, which will make me appear to be a better duelist than I am if I use my void point there. And that was kind of the intent behind it. So as far as the skill ranks goes, if you look at the chart, it basically says that 1 means that you are learning and you're very new to it, 2 means that you're kind of a novice, and 3 means that you've studied it. So I thought, given my character having 24 experience, a 3 in martial arts probably is where I want to be in the end. But because I have 24 experience, I had to decide where to spend it. This is where the relationships and stuff go over here, where I've got Scorpion, Daidoji, and everything here. So I haven't established just yet as far as their statuses. This is stuff that I'm going to talk to Murdoch at the beginning of our next game as to what we want to status them out as. I don't know that the clans themselves will have a status, but the individuals should definitely. When you type in on the first page, the rings actually carry over to the second page, which I like automation, so that was really cool. But what I really like about conflict mode is, again, you get these cheat sheets built in. And this is actually identical. This is the exact same one that Fantasy Flight put out. This is not something different. So if I take the Earth stance in a conflict, other characters cannot spend advantages when targeting me. And that's basically what it will tell you, exactly what each one of these things does. There's a really cool martial arts ability that is a kata rank 2, where you can change someone's stance. And it's really good because if you learn how to manipulate stances, it could work to your advantage. Because let's say somebody's blocking you out from spinning advantages and you need to, you could knock them out of earth stance and move them over to something like water stance, which may be bad in its own way, but at least you can spend advantages, which he was locking you out of. Resilience is earth plus water times 2, composure is fire plus earth times 2, focus is air plus fire, and vigilance is water plus air divided by 2, but you always round down. So my character is probably fairly average right now. With a 10 resilience, I could probably withstand 1 to 2 strikes with the katana. At 24 experience, I did some number crunching. The highest I could get my resilience up to, and I would be really bad at other stuff, would be a 16, which means that I could maybe withstand, let's see, the weapon damage on a katana is 5. I could maybe do 3-4 hits with a katana, because more successes means more damage with a katana. So that kind of gives you an idea of how easy it is to die in this game. So coming from previous editions, I really, really like that. L5R, playing Ibushi has always been a hard challenge from character creation, because you knew that your character could end up in scenes where you're probably going to die. And you have to pick and choose your fights. I'm happy to be playing a more confrontational character this time, so I don't know how long I'm going to make it through the adventure. If my character dies, that is something that happens. That's part of playing L5R, but the good thing is I'm kind of balanced. I have a 10 in resilience, which means 1 to 2 hits, a composure of 10, which probably means about maybe like 3 or 4 social related type things. I can take up to 10 strife, which is basically like we were saying, is each of those stripes you have, you can actually stack those up and up to your maximum composure. Once you reach your composure, you will go into your outbursts, which I could choose my personal or any of the ones that are on a list. So with that in mind, I actually have a good deal of breathing room on my composure. I've been playing with the dice roller, making a couple different dice rolls. It seems like you can get probably like 2 to 3 strife each time you roll. It kind of varies depending on what dice are involved and how well you or how bad you roll. So it's hard to kind of judge exactly how much. I would say probably that's going to last me about 5 rolls before I run through composure. And there are ways to bring your composure back down, so don't think that it's a one-way street. Focus is your initiative when you're paying attention. Vigilance is your initiative when you are surprised. As you can tell, I'm much better when I'm paying attention. I'm a bodyguard, which means that my vigilance should probably be a little higher, but it is what it is. Unfortunately, that divided by 2 hurts everyone just as bad. I have a water plus air, so that was a 5 in total, which wouldn't be bad except for that divide 2 thing. My maximum void points being 2 because my void ring is a 2. It asks for the advantages, disadvantages listed here again. I don't really like that. I think this is kind of a waste of page, to be honest. If I'm going to have them listed on the first page here, I don't really see a need to list them again on the second page. I did because it's a blank and I'm intending to fill out the sheets the way they're supposed to be done. The school ability here, pretty cool. We talked about that last time. No real problems with the spacing or anything like that. The weapons chart. So 3 weapons and 3 armor slots. The armor slots is probably fine, but I would have liked maybe like 5 weapon slots. Most Bushi, for example, get 2 weapons by default. A katana and a wakizashi. That's your daisho. And then you usually end up with 1 or 2 more weapons that maybe are the ones you use often. My character happened to have a spear, so that was the one that I chose. it was either spear or naginata, and the Daidoji used spear in the story, so I went with that. I'm just correcting the sheet here because I decided to take a pony instead of an attendant, so that is there. Let's talk about how techniques are listed. So the first page only has 2 technique slots, and then you get a whole page full of technique slots. There's a bunch of ways that you could build your character, and you could either go real heavy into techniques, or you could go into skills and increase your dice pools and things like that. Most characters are probably going to end up kind of balanced. This seems like a game that if you focus too heavy on one end or another, your character will become kind of lopsided and not very good at stuff in general, just as a fair warning. So I have Aiajutsu, and then I have Weight of Duty. Again, I decided to change that. Basically, the difference between Weight of Duty and Shallow Waters is I get to learn about a material thing that the person desires, and their ninja for Shallow Waters, and then for Duty I get to learn one of their fears as far as failing as a samurai, and their giri, which is their duty to their lord. So again, more in line with the kind of character that I'm envisioning. The next one that I picked up was Crescent Moon Style. This one I really liked because it again reinforces the idea of a bodyguard. So basically, each one of these has either a perform action or it's triggered because it's passive. This one is basically a passive thing. So it says when you perform a center or guard action, you may spend opportunity in the following way. For one opportunity, until the beginning of your turn, after a character at the range of 1 to 2 performs an attack against your an attack action targeting you or another character you are guarding, you may perform a strike action targeting that character. So this is you putting up a guard, and when they go to strike, you hit them too. I thought that was really cool. Matched basically the idea of being a bodyguard. There is another ability that is an Akado thing, which I will probably pick up later on, which is another good kind of bodyguard type ability. That's a tier 2 kata. So if you look up the katas, one of the requirements for Crescent Moon Style is school rank 2. However, inside my school path, I actually get Crescent of the Moon at rank 1, which means I get early access to it, and I pay the normal cost. I just have it available to me earlier. So that's why I went ahead and took it, even though I normally would have to be at rank 2. Striking as air. This one basically gives me another use for opportunities when I roll martial arts melee. And the good thing about this is it does not determine, melee ranged or unarmed. For the air check, what I can do is I can choose any of the normal stuff, plus I get the ability to increase the target number of the first attack targeting me before the beginning of my next turn by 1 opportunity spent this way. This kata basically, so long as I'm attacking in the air stance, that's what it's going to get me. But let me show you what being in the air stance does, just so you kind of have an idea of what exactly I do. So if I go to the air stance, which is one of my stronger stats anyways, I increase the TN of attacks and scheme checks targeting me by 1, and then I turn around and I use strike as air. I can increase my TN again by spending opportunity. So if I get myself in a skirmish or a duel, I can spend that to make it harder to hit me, which will make me very defensive, which is kind of the character type that I want to go for. The next one is called Spinning Blade Style. This one is another kata. This was kind of just a fun choice. Basically, it allows me to take advantage of some dual wielding. So basically, when I make a martial arts melee check or unarmed check, if I have a second weapon ready and do not use it for the attack, I may spend opportunity for 2 opportunity. Use your second readied weapon against one target of your action, inflicting physical damage equal to its base damage. If that target is dazed, increase that damage by your school rank. So after spending all my experience, I'm actually rank 2. So if I was to use, for example, the Wakizashi, let me pull it up here. Oops, I went the wrong direction. If I was to use the Wakizashi, my damage would be 3 plus my rank 2 if they're dazed. So that would be 5 damage plus the damage that I do for the katana in the main hand. The cool thing that I really like about the 2-weapon fighting is it allows me to decide which weapon is considered my main, which is really kind of cool, to be honest. Basically what it does for me is if I wanted to put my Wakizashi inside my main hand and then have my katana at my off, I could do that. I have to pull up some more rules because there are a couple other things that go into two-weapon fighting, and I want to make sure I've got it all straight before the game starts. So this page, I think given the way that the fill-in boxes were done, this page could have been a little bit more efficient. So this is kind of like a generic sheet so that you can put whatever you put your skills into so that you know what it is. And so the intention is you write down what skill group you have near the words skill group, and then you put down how much experience you've invested. That didn't really work with the way that these boxes were done, but on the character sheet it does. And basically, because I spent 2 on Crescent Moon style, this should say 2 instead of Crescent Moon style. And then they give you like another area to put down your purchases. And I think this is for stuff that doesn't go towards your school is what this is supposed to be. For this character sheet, this seems to be the best way to record this so that it makes sense. And I put school rank, what my total is. So from the looks of it, what you should do is record all advancement on this side and then turn around and anything that goes towards your school, also mark it on the school side. It's kind of a weird way to do it, I think, but I guess it works. Increasing rings is expensive, as it's always been. I'm a little confused on increasing the void ring because advancing the other rings says that you can only advance it as high as your lowest ring plus your void ring. So if your void ring, I'm not sure if the void ring is supposed to be more expensive or not. Maybe that's an overlook in the beta. As of right now, everything looks like the void ring should cost the same amount to increase as the rest of the rings. Meaning depending on how you build your character, you may want to invest heavier inside the other rings or invest into void. That way when your low ring of 2 gets added to void, it doesn't prevent the other ones. So what I'm probably going to end up doing if I was to play this character in long term, I would probably do it that way. Increase my lowest ring to a 2, which makes me average inside that ring, and then I would increase my void because my void does cool things for me. That way my cap increases for my other stats, like air, for example. And then I also put how much out of each one just so that I could track it here, and then when I hit 16 out of 16, I start it over. So each time you advance into a new rank, you have to start at 0 and build your way up. So Spinning Blade style got me 2, and Advancing Martial Arts to 3 got me 8. I was a little critical about how I placed my skills. I wanted to, or my experience points. I wanted to make sure I got full advantage of it since I got a lump sum right at first. I suspect that that's pretty much how most people will build, at least for this adventure. And that's okay. But I have a feeling that if you were to play inside a campaign, it would be a little bit more organic, and you'd come to find out that like maybe XP spent at rank 1, you end up with 18 because you had to get one thing. Like you had to increase your martial arts skill and you wanted to do it early instead of later inside this block. So you spent 18 out of 16 and now you're starting at 0 out of 20 into the next block, that sort of thing. There's also a little check for you to do completed on here. And then this is the thing that I wanted to talk about, the title names. This is why I said I think the titles stuff will eventually help out, because it looks like you can invest experience into it and increase your titles over time. It looks like maybe you select one main title and then it gets like you could do Master Swordsman, and then it will have stuff like Student or like let's see, Novice, Student, Journeyman, Master, or whatever kind of ranking style with it. And then when you get probably like 6 ranks or so, kind of like the school, you could click complete and then you get a title mastery ability. The beta does allude to the fact that there are other titles and you can gain more titles as the game progresses, which I think is really cool. However, you can only get the effect of one title at a time. Again, another kind of neat feature. It gives me more to spend on, more experience to kind of decide what I want to do with my character. But I have a feeling that kind of like the other Fantasy Flight games that use, this narrative dice system, it's going to end up making your characters feel very kind of low-powered for a while, which isn't inherently a bad thing. I don't really like the feel of it for Star Wars, but I think it makes a lot of sense for L5R. L5R, as I've mentioned in previous videos, is kind of a like a grimdark setting. It's grimdark with a shiny coating is the way I like to think about it. It's like an M&M. It's sugar on the outside and dark chocolate on the inside. That's basically L5R. There are a lot of areas where it seems like everything is maybe bright noble, but then you turn around and you find out that there's this underbelly inside of it. So that's kind of cool. I do think that the pools might be a little bit hard to build up at character creation, because I was playing with the dice, and it really makes a difference how many dice you have in there. If you have like 6 dice, it feels like a good pool. You feel like you succeed a decent amount of time. If you have anything less than 6 dice, it starts to become harder and harder for you to do things. Target numbers matter a lot, and it makes you kind of want to try and stack things in your favor. So like if I was fighting with martial arts melee, to strike someone I need a target number of 2. I could technically do that with any of my abilities, but if I use earth or air, that's going to be better chances of me succeeding, which means my character's probably going to favor a feint approach or a withstand approach. The only thing that I don't like about the martial arts approaches here is withstand for earth. Withstand is a very defensive thing. I wish they would have chose something that could be used in both ways. Like overwhelm could be used as defensive and offensive. Shift as well. Sacrifice, I think so as well. Feint, even to a degree, could be. But withstand doesn't really have like a proactive approach like an offensive. And earth kind of suffers that in the different types of approaches. The social, however, for reasoning does seem like a good balance there. Recall is mostly proactive, but if you look, there's a couple of them that are like that. Like, here we go. Attune is kind of a defensive thing. You're basically attuning yourself and getting closer to it. It's not often used for both defensive and offensive, if you want to think about it like that, even though that's probably not going to be used in a combat-like capability. For social approaches, the one that I can let's see. Trick seems mostly offensive. I'm not sure how you use it defensively unless it's to use to like determine if someone's tricking you, maybe. I guess that would work. And then for scholarly approaches, these seem mostly as things that could go both directions, as defensive and offensive. So there's not really like a lot of abilities that seem kind of stand out as far as like one way or the other, but withstand really strikes me as the one that probably could use some editing. I like the idea of withstand, but I think maybe like something else could go there, and I'm not sure what it is, to be honest. So that's basically what the character sheet looks like. All in all, it was fine. I don't like repeating myself on sheets, so if I was to write this out, I definitely would not have used these 2 blocks. That's useless space to me. Conditions come up in play, so that will be useful when it comes time. The technique sheet was good. I think for a more advanced character, you're going to need more of these pages, which isn't a big deal. Those are easy to print. And then the experience spending chart, we kind of talked about it. I think it could use a little bit of efficiency. What I would like is, instead of having this chart here, like that's generic version, players have the option to print off their school-specific ones if they want, or they could just do like this and track it like that. And then if I was to take, like, let's say I don't know, what's something that I don't get? Sentiment. Let's say I take that and I go to a rank 1. That's going to cost me 2 experience, and what I would do is just do that. And that's how I would show it does not belong to my school, and that I chose to get that with my own personal experience. It's not a perfect way, but I think that that would be more efficient than all of this kind of redundant space on the skill purchase sheet. I also don't like the redundancy of skills or your experience on this page and your page 1 experience, which is also down here. Again, not a terribly effective use of page sheet space. I do like the setup for the most part, and I think the things that I would like to add are things like what advantages could be used for generically, not any of the specific stuff. There's actually a chart right at the beginning of the book that talks about, like, if you take an air approach, this is what you can always use air for, narratively and mechanically. This is what you can always use earth for, narratively, mechanically. I think that should be included somewhere, because they included your symbol key for dice. It would be pretty helpful to have those handy. There is a link on the Happy Jacks forums for a cheat sheet that has some of that material on there. I think at a good Roll20, I would copy pretty much all of the charts inside the book that are relevant to the type of game that you're going to do. The charts that are specific for stuff like doing an intrigue, doing a duel, things like that you could spend advantages on, I would label them all and then pop them inside there. At some point when I put together my campaign, I'm actually going to include all those, and just like I did in previous videos, I'll show you how I set that stuff up. And if you're antsy to jump the gun and get ahead on me on that, just check out the channel Roll20. They do a lot of stuff with Roll20 on YouTube here, and they show different games so that you can kind of see how it's used. And then the other one I would take a look at is Taking 20, where Cody actually will teach you how to make all of those tools that they talk about or use inside there, plus some stuff that they don't even use that is really handy and helpful, like how to build or how to build like libraries, and basically put links to other things inside there so that it lessens the congestion inside your Roll20 account. That's pretty much all I was going to talk about for the character tools. All in all, if I was to rate it from like a 1 to 10 as far as character sheets are concerned, I would probably say 8. There's some ineffective uses of the pages. I don't think this whole last page is really all that terribly useful. I think honestly I would do better if I printed the school specific list and just wrote down things that I spent experience on that were not related to my school on the back. But that's personal preference. Maybe with titles that will become more useful, but who knows. I don't like the redundancy of certain spaces. I'd like a few more weapon slots. Those are the main things. For the 20 questions, as far as a tool and the handiness to use it, I'd say probably like a 9. I love the 20 questions. They're really great. Some of the questions did change for this edition, as they do with most, so I wasn't too surprised about that. But the 20 questions were a little harder to follow when you got to the questions about like your flaws and things like that, just because you had to read the main chunk and then you had to jump over to another section of the book. It was a lot of back and forth stuff, which is more about the book than it is the sheet itself. But I don't think there's a better way to do it than how they've done it. So it's a little nitpicky. And moving this stuff over to a character sheet, there's a little bit of jumping around on the character sheet, so that's kind of why I say like a 9 out of 10 for the 20 questions, because maybe there could be a better way to set up the sheet so that it's very effective, but it's not hard to follow. That's pretty much the main things that I wanted to say about the character generation tools. All in all, I'm really liking the system. I've found a couple things that I really like, and a couple things that I'm a little on the fence about, and some things that I really just have to see and play. And from what I've read, the adventure that we're going to play is going to meet a lot of those things that I really want to see. Unfortunately, I found out that Murdoch wanted to run the adventure in the book after I read the adventure in the book, so I'm going to try and play without ruining any of the story for myself. I didn't spend a terrible amount of time studying it, though, so I don't remember all of the details, so that'll work to my advantage. So, if you are interested in catching that campaign, it was supposed to start tonight. However, we unfortunately ran into a little bit of an issue, and we had to push it back a little bit. So we are probably going to start next Tuesday, barring any sort of issues. If there is an issue, I will be back Tuesday to make another L5R video. However, I may try and squeeze in one in between. I have a lot of stuff going on. I intended these videos to be kind of daily, and they've kind of not worked out, unfortunately. It's a pretty busy season for me at work, and it doesn't really stop until December, and then it only slows down, and then I'm right back into it. So I make the best I can with the time that I have, and for everybody that's been following along, thank you very much. New people to the channel, I always ask you guys, feel free to give me some love. Hit that like button, subscribe, pass word along to your friends, anybody who's interested in L5R. I intend to do a lot of stuff. If you're interested in 4th edition L5R, I've got stuff on the channel for that. In fact, the campaign I'm going to do with the Fantasy Flight L5R material will actually be using a city that I generated for 4th edition by AEG's L5R material. I'm going to update the names, make it a little bit more specific to the timeline that we're playing in, but it will be a 3 Feet from Death campaign, and I'll talk more about that as we get a little closer. So if you are interested in 3 Feet from Death and want to see some of the legacy that goes into the next campaign, check out those games on the channel. As always, guys, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you at the gaming table.